you feel like you're in the Twilight Zone lately? I'm serious. You know, they've talked about different drugs. Now they're talking vaccines, and I mean vaccines galore. But will they work on preventing COVID-19? Now, 2 have received the fast-track status by the FDA, by the joint development, by the German biotech firm, I guess it's BioNTech, and U.S. pharmaceutical giant Pfizer. Now, I need some expertise here, and that's why Dr. Dean Fanelli is with us. He's a partner in the intellectual property department of the Seyfarth Shaw, Washington. He's had over 20 years' experience in pharmaceutical biotechnology, and now Moderna is launching their coronavirus vaccine phase 3 trial. You know what? I don't know who to believe anymore. I really don't. Dr. Fanelli, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us and hopefully get us on the right track.
It's my pleasure, Mary Jane. Thank you for having me.
Okay, now what do they mean by the fast track?
Yeah, so with any drug, there's different types of clinical trials that they have to do, and they have phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Now, fast track is basically a means to speed that up for it speeds up the development basically for a serious condition that addresses an unmet need. And, you know, if there ever was one, the coronavirus fits that.
Yeah. Okay. So how long does it take to do a clinical trial, or is each one different? I don't understand.
Yeah, they're all different. And, you know, when it comes to vaccine development, typically you're talking 10 years, maybe more in some cases. And for each clinical trial, as I mentioned, there's a preclinical study that's done in cells and animals, and then once you get the positive results there, after FDA approval, allows you to test your drug candidate in humans. Now, the phase is a phase 1 where you're looking at dosage and safety. It has a small amount of people, maybe 80 to 50 people, and that could last a couple years. And you have phase 2, which, could have a couple hundred people. Again, you're looking at safety, and you're looking at, does the drug work? That could last another couple years. Then you get into the big phase 3 trial, and that's, the big news today, where Moderna started its phase 3. That's a huge trial, and that's the trial right before allowance. If that goes well, if we see efficacy, if the drug works, of course, they're continually monitoring safety. And like I said, this is usually a long, you're talking about a decade sometimes for drugs. Here, the genome of the virus was just announced in January. Months later, we're talking about a phase 3. Now really unprecedented.
Phase 3 is like, what, 30,000 U.S. participants?
Yeah, 30,000 participants, and they're actually some of these phase 3s that are happening now, because there's Moderna, then separately there's Pfizer and BioNTech, and then there's you may have heard AstraZeneca and Oxford have a separate phase 3. These are happening all over the world, so it's not only U.S. citizens that are participating and, being very heroic and taking these candidates to see if they work, but it's literally people all over the world that are taking these drug candidates.
Now, they say, 100 million doses by 2020 and 1.2 billion by 2021. Now, couldn't the virus actually mutate by then? And then the virus is not on a schedule.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And that's, when we think about our seasonal flu vaccine, that's one of the big issues there. Why, one of the reasons why when you get that injection, you're not 100%. Viruses certainly mutate. In this case, a lot of these, when we look at vaccines, they tend to use different ways of making them. So one, you could use an inactivated version of the virus. That's, for example, a polio virus, or polio vaccine, or a weakened version of the virus. That's what we see in measles. In this case, some are using traditional methods, but the Moderna phase 3 and the Pfizer and BioNTech, these are using completely new methods of what's called RNA vaccines. And these are looking at a particular portion that's indicative of coronavirus. You may have seen the picture that has all these little, what looks like crowns surrounding it.
Oh, yeah.
So that's what they're focusing on, the spike protein, and that's the part of the virus that it uses to get itself into human cells. So really just cutting-edge technology that's moving at, literally light speed here. 6 months in, we're in a phase 3.
Now, I've heard a couple of things. One is I've heard of now boosting with infusion therapy your T cells so that it can identify cancers, because sometimes a cancer cell can hide, and the T cells, when they go after it, they don't see it as a bad thing. And these new kinds of therapy, the immunotherapy, are teaching the T cells, and this is my vocabulary because I don't have the technology, but it teaches the T cells that, no, that's a cancer cell, so you can go after that. Now, can't they do the same thing with a virus and say, well, the virus is there, go after this virus and do something about it, kill it?
Yeah, and that's exactly what they're doing. And by the way, you did a great job on that. So there's two things we're looking at here. We're looking at antibodies that build up, and then exactly like you said, T cells. Now, T cells, if you think about them, that's like the infantry of the immune system. They're cells that are specific to either a virus or, as you mentioned, cutting-edge technology that is just still in the lab now and not really in humans or not available in drugs. Is these vaccines for cancer. Now, that's exactly the same theory. What they're doing is cancer cells, some of them have these either peptides or some type of molecules that are indicative of that cancer cell. If you can identify that and then administer that in a vaccine, then the body will build up immunity to that. And then next time that cancer cell with that indicative molecule on it was in the body, your own immune system, the T cells, would go after it and fight it. So you're exactly right, and that's what they're doing.
Now, the other part is talking about the antibodies. And so many times we've heard, once you have the flu, now this is a virus, it's worse, but once you have it, then you won't get it again. And they're finding now that the antibodies are lasting maybe 4 to 6 weeks, and then they go away. So that means you could have it again, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and that's a great question. And that's one of the things that they're looking for in these phase 3 studies. And only time, no matter how quickly we get through these, only time is going to tell that. So you're exactly right. What they're looking at is for these therapeutic antibodies, and we don't know, frankly, how long they last. We'd like them to last, obviously, as long as they can, or as long as we can get the population to a tipping point where enough of the population receives the vaccine and the coronavirus is out of circulation over this period. So hopefully, we're talking about a period of time where these antibodies have this memory response that lasts, so we can get this under control. But you're absolutely right, and there's really, that's one of the critical issues and questions that they're looking at during these phase 3 trials.
So now what's going to happen? Now, we've been told we're nowhere close to the end of this virus. I mean, we're still in phase 1, actually. We're not even into the next phase. But what happens in the fall when another flu, which is normally what happens in the fall, we get a flu, that comes in on top of the virus? What the heck is going to happen?
Yeah, so it's a separate influenza, a separate virus from the coronavirus. So yes, we'll have our standard flu season starting, I guess, in the fall, it's lasting through the winter, and you're right, the coronavirus will still be there as well. So hopefully, anywhere from 40 to 60 million people typically get the flu each year. So it's going to be a bit scary. People are going to have the flu, and they'll be coughing and have conditions and symptoms that are quite similar in some regards to the coronavirus. So they are separate viruses. So just because you get one, and just because we have a vaccine for one, we will need a separate vaccine. And you're right, you do build up antibodies to these. But yeah, it's definitely on its way.
And it's also freaky because, how many doggone vaccines can you have? I mean, how many can you take? The body will say, wait a minute, which is which here now? It's confusing.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And, the flu is recurrent. It comes back every year. The hope here is once we get this vaccine and we can get the the virus, the coronavirus, under control, we can eradicate it, so it won't be this recurring thing. Because obviously, everyone should get a flu shot, and it definitely helps. But you're right. You don't want to be pumping the body with all these different drugs and vaccines if you can avoid it.
Yeah, because you don't know which one's going to, not be happy about the other one being there. You know what I mean?
That's right. Yep.
It's putting it in common language, but it's kind of like that, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the less you put in your body, the better. Especially when it comes to foreign substances. So I agree with you. It's once we get this under control, hopefully it won't be a recurring issue that we have to have a coronavirus vaccine every year or every couple of years.
Yeah. The other thing I read something about that there are many forms, of course, of coronavirus, but they said of this particular COVID-19, there are several forms within it. Is that true?
Yeah, there are different coronaviruses. So this particular coronavirus is, you may have heard of SARS-CoV-2.
Yeah.
It's a novel virus, but there have been other coronaviruses in the past. The SARS virus in 2003, and then there was what's called MERS, a Middle Eastern respiratory virus that occurred a handful of years later than that. So there have been coronaviruses, but we've been really lucky over the past several decades. If you think back 10 years ago to swine flu, that affected 65 million Americans, and hate to say it this way, but luckily, I think the death toll was around 12,000 people. So terrible, tragic news, but definitely in the big scheme of things, we fast forward now, and we're really only at 4 million that we know about cases in the U.S. Yet we have 150,000 people that have died. So it's really a terrible situation.
Do we know why this particular strain of COVID or coronavirus is so virulent?
We don't. Yeah, they're still studying that, and there's so much. Like I said, we've only been at this for 6 months, so there's so much that we still don't know about it yet. And that's one of the things. I mean, you may have heard about how many the term R naught, how many people. If I'm infected, how many people will I infect? And we still don't know that answer yet. So there's a lot of questions that still need to be answered. And like I said, it's only really time that'll answer those questions.
The other question is, and I heard this again, I'm a news junkie, so I listen to a lot of this stuff. Have to, because I also anchor the new news as well as doing my talk show. But I heard that maybe there might need to be two separate vaccines, one for older people and one for younger people. Have you heard anything about that?
Yeah, that's a great question, and they're looking at this. So, for example, there's about 150 or so vaccine candidates that are being tested, and there about 2 or 3 dozen of them are actually in the clinic, meaning they're being tested in humans. And we still have to see. For example, there's a Chinese study that's going on by a company called CanSino that they have a vaccine candidate they're working on, but it was found to be less effective in people over the age of 55. Now, obviously, that's the most critical demographic because people over 65, over 70 tend to be have the worst effects of the virus. So as they're studying these, it's going to take multiple shots on goal. There may be a case where you need to get an initial vaccine and then a booster shot a month later. It may be the case where certain vaccines that are being done in the traditional way work better in younger people, where these new RNA-type vaccines work better. So these are questions that will be answered in the Phase 3 trial. But, yes, I have heard that as well. You're absolutely right.
The other thing, too, is how the heck are you going to distribute even the first 100 million doses, and then to think by the end of 2021, 1.2 billion doses? How are you going to get everybody vaccinated?
Yeah, that is, it's one thing coming up with a vaccine, getting 300 million people in the U.S. and, however many billion it's going to take worldwide is a mammoth task. And, through Operation Warp Speed, which is the Trump administration's initiative to have 300 million doses by the end of this year, they've also contracted to have syringes available, to have glass vials available. They've contracted with different developers of the vaccine so that we can hit this at take different shots on goal. So we're not just reliant on one company. So there'll be multiple companies. For example, last week you may have heard that the U.S. purchased 100 million doses from Pfizer of the Pfizer and BioNTech vaccine candidate with the option to, if it works, acquire another 500 million. So there's going to be multiple companies that are supplying this, and it's not going to be one company that's producing all this. It's going to happen from different angles, and it's going to be, even if a vaccine is available by the end of this year, the beginning of 2021, it's going to take several months to roll this out to people. And I suspect what will happen is, and the National Science Foundation and the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease have put together an apolitical group to decide, who will get this first. Now, of course, you can imagine people over the age of 65 at high risk. I would guess they would be the first ones to get it, and then they'll figure out how to distribute it from there. But certainly high-risk people would get it first.
Just out of curiosity, how old are you?
I'm 48.
48. Oh, you're young. Okay. Do you think the vaccine will work for you? I mean, do you believe in it?
I do. I mean, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration is literally the premier regulatory body in the world when it comes to evaluating drug substances. This vaccine or these vaccine candidates that ultimately get approved, they're going to get scrutinized by every regulatory body throughout the world. Everybody's eyes are going to be on this. So, who knows how the long-term effects of the vaccine candidate, because like I said, typically you're talking 10 years of data where you analyze this. They are very, very much focused on safety. So at least in my opinion, I'm confident that if a vaccine candidate comes out, I would take it.
Okay. The other thing, too, is how we're talking about wash your hands, wear the mask, keep the distance, stay home if you can, all these kinds of things. How much of that are you doing?
I'm doing. I would say everyone should be wearing a mask. Now, look, if you're out going for a jog by yourself, I don't.
Oh, yeah.
In my opinion, you don't need a mask. But whenever you're around people, I always have a mask on. I was out yesterday around people, and I, in the grocery store, have a mask. And not only that, but also, even with a mask, try and keep your distance from people. So I'm doing that very diligently, and I would encourage everyone to definitely wear a mask and social distance. And obviously, be in tune to keep using the hand sanitizer and washing hands.
How can we persuade people that has to be done? Don't you think if maybe for the next 4 months, 6 months, whatever, everybody would do just what you said, wear a mask, distance, wash your hands, be a little careful, don't have COVID parties, for God's sakes. I mean, I couldn't believe that people are doing that and giving a prize to the first person who gets the COVID-19. Several people have died already because of that.
Yeah.
So don't you think we could I'm not saying completely go away or completely do away with the coronavirus, but we could make a good dent.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. If you look at some of these other countries that, have fared a little better than we have in the U.S., they are a little more diligent. I think, I'm glad to hear the president now telling people to wear the mask. But you're right. Had we, if we were for the masks for 8 weeks and we're very strict about that and strict about social distancing and obviously all this other nonsense about, avoiding parties. I get it. It's summer. We want to be out and have fun. But, this is a contagious disease. And although people over 65 are the highest risk, it does not discriminate. And people younger than that, as you said, certainly have died from this. So really not a smart thing to do to have a COVID party.
Well, isn't the latest statistics that I read that over 50%, and maybe it's even a little bit higher now, are being infected are between, I think, 18 and 49.
That's right. That's absolutely right. So, at first, I think while this virus was making its way through the population, the older people, we heard all the tragic stories about nursing homes.
Nursing homes, yeah.
But, now I think, to be honest, I think it's exactly like you said. I think you have this group of younger people that sort of let their guard down because they thought, hey, I'm young, I'm healthy, it's only affecting older people. And what I'd say to that is, yes, you probably are correct that you'll be fine and recover, but you have to think about everyone else, your parents, your grandparents, even when you go to the store and just you're around other people. I mean, this isn't only a situation where, you think about yourself. We really have to be true citizens here and think about how this affects other people and how what I do affects other people.
Well, hello. You should see, the statistics now are that if you get the virus, they don't know how long it's going to be with you, not as a virus, but affecting other organs in your body, your lungs, your liver, your kidney, even your brain. And it could be now that it'll happen, these side effects, or could be several years down the line and all of a sudden something's going to go wrong.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, when we think about flu, that's something we know about and people mostly recover. And, we just don't know. There's a lot of questions that have to be answered with this virus. So really, it's a huge risk, to get the virus that if you're not taking precautions, really not smart.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. You said it, but I'm going to say it even worse. Don't be stupid. I'm serious. Why? We're such a country that we want gratification like ASAP. We want it right now. And for a party today, you could be suffering for years down the line. If you could just put it off for a while and look forward to when you can do that and be safe, right?
You're absolutely right. Yes.
It's common sense, but I'm beginning to wonder if common sense doesn't exist anymore. Because, we've had a free reign for a long time. I mean, the last pandemic was, 1918?
Right.
And we've come a long way with technology. We've come a long way with drugs. But viruses don't care. Viruses don't care. They mutate. They change. It's sort of like a cockroach. Cockroaches walked away from nuclear testing sites. So
that's right.
And a virus, I kind of equate to that. It doesn't care what you are going to throw at it. It's going to find a way around it. And if we could just accept that and do the best that we possibly can, I think we're going to be able to get out of this. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I think, we have probably 5-6 months before we have a vaccine that's available. Wear your mask, do your social distancing. I mean, it seems like a long time, and I know the weather's beautiful now. It's summer. We want to get out, but, just try and social distance and wear that mask for the next few months. Like you said, it's going to be over soon, and it'll be that much more fun once we can get out and be safe.
You bet. Do you have a website?
I do. It's Seyfarth.com.
Okay, and spell that, please.
SEY, F as in Frank, ARTH, .com. Seyfarth Shaw is the name. Seyfarth Shaw is the name of the firm, and Seyfarth.com is the website.
Fantastic. Well, Dr. Fanelli, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. Again, if we would just use a little common sense and, be respectful of others, be respectful of yourself. I mean, if you're just kind of calm around this whole thing. I mean, a neighbor of ours last night drove me crazy. They were having a party, and they were younger people. They were probably maybe early 20s, and no social distancing, no masks. And I'm going, stay away, and
you're right.
I don't want to hear it if you guys have problems, because you know what you're supposed to do, and if you don't do it, I'm not saying you deserve what you get, but I'm not going to feel that bad for you, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, even though you're 20, you're not in that high-risk demographic, but certainly it's not all clear. And like you said, we don't know the long-term effects of you may recover in, 6 months, 3 years down the road, something, could affect the organs. Yeah.
Well, Dr. Fanelli, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us, and I hope you'll join us again.
It was my pleasure. Thank you for having me, Mary Jane.
You bet. In the meantime, live simply, laugh often, love deeply, and above all else, dare to dream.